the movie based on Ed Wood. This is the only genuine good movie we're talking about. This is not so good it's bad. This is good. So we talked a little bit about this filmmaker, Tim Burton, when I referenced the 89 Batman, which was one of my favorite films. And this is right up there with one of my favorite Tim Burton films. This is a great film. It's funny.
Yes.
It's well paced. I mean, it embellishes reality, but it gets the gist of the story right. Obviously mixed up a little bit for fantasy, but yeah, this movie is really good. And I thought Tim Burton did a great job directing, and I thought Johnny Depp was brilliant.
I agree. I love this movie, and much like one of the others we talked about, I knew I loved this movie in the first 30 seconds. You know, when it starts and you see the actor playing Criswell sit up in the coffin, and he says something. He makes a speech that's right out of an Ed Wood movie, but it's about this movie, and then, you know, we get the theme music and the montage of the graves, and I was just like, oh my God, this is my new favorite movie. I just knew right away this movie was great, and it didn't let me down. I loved it all the way through.
And people know him now as Ed Wood instead of Edward D. Wood Jr. because of this movie. People just assumed he was called Ed Wood. So
yes.
yeah. This movie is brilliant. It covers a lot. I mean, I think we talked a lot about his life. This movie covers a lot of that except the alcoholism, because it kind of ends with Plan 9.
Yeah.
So
they kind of end on a high note, which is what a lot of movies do. They get out before we get to the really depressing stuff.
Yeah. But, so this isn't some like hard hitting, you know, biopic. This is just meant for fun. Yeah. This doesn't get into the dark stuff at all.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is very fun. I think it's a very entertaining movie. They do an excellent job of recreating the scenes from Ed Wood movies, and I think they cast it very well. I mean, Martin Landau is brilliant.
See, that's where we're gonna differ.
Oh yeah?
I thought Johnny Depp was great as Ed Wood. I thought the actress, I think it was Tim Burton's girlfriend at the time, she was great as Elvira. She had the tiny waist. She was beautiful.
Yes, yes.
I thought George the Animal Steele was brilliant casting as Tor.
Yes.
Wrestling fans will know who he is.
Yes.
Hairy wrestler from the 80s. I thought, who's that girl that was from Sex and the City that was cast as his girlfriend?
Sarah Jessica Parker.
Sarah Jessica Parker. And people mock Sarah Jessica Parker for looking like a horse, calling her horse face and stuff like that. This is the movie that probably she regrets taking, because in one of the bad reviews, she's like, I don't look like a horse, do I? And that is something that's haunted her ever since, because they make that horse joke about her face all the time. But she was great casting.
Yeah.
As much as everyone else was great casting, I do have to admit there was one terrible casting in this movie. And it was with a character that won an Oscar for the role. Now, fans of Howard Stern are going to know who I'm talking about. But there is only one person who should ever play Bela Lugosi on film. And that is Gilbert Godfrey.
I always think of that line in Dracula. To die, to be really dead, must be glorious.
So,
really?
I'm assuming you saying really means you've never listened to a lot of Howard Stern.
No.
Howard Stern, you know who Howard Stern is, though?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
One of the most brilliant guests on the Howard Stern show is Gilbert Godfrey, comedian.
I'm reading this. Gilbert was on the show 122 times over the years.
Oh, yeah, he was on a lot.
From Problem Child 2, Beverly Hills Cop, a lot of bit roles and stuff like this. The guy that talked like this, he was the Aflac Duck in the Aflac Duck. Aflac, he would go on that show, and his whole life was just watching old movies. All he did his whole life was watch old monster movies, and he would go on there and he would just quote monster movies, and they would talk about the news, and he would talk about like any kind of current event story. He'd just come in with like his Bela Lugosi vampire voice and be like, and a woman was killed, and it's like, yes, I killed her for her blood, and he would just do the impression, and he was fucking brilliant, and he would just do it for comedy's sake. And of course, when I bring this up, you haven't heard of it, You haven't seen it, so me referencing this thing all falls flat on its face. Because I thought I would bring this up and you'd be like, oh, Howard Stern, oh, Gilbert Godfrey, that's hilarious. But of course, you're like, you have no idea what I'm talking about.
No, I don't.
And I just keep digging this hole, telling this story, thinking it's going to be hilarious because you know exactly where I'm going with this. But no, I was only jokingly saying that because he did do an impression, but he just did it for jokes. But he probably watched Dracula a million times, and he would just go on there and quote it all the time on the show. And it's just funny to end up seeing this movie where someone wins an Oscar for playing Bela Lugosi, and he would be on one of the most popular shows ever in terrestrial radio, constantly doing an impression of someone who, you know, an Oscar was won for playing the part. It's like, geez, like, this guy could have done it, you know? So, anyway.
Right. Okay.
You killed my story because you have no idea what I'm talking about.
Yeah. I failed that one, yeah.
So sad.
Yeah.
All right. Those were all my thoughts. Anything else you want to wrap up with on Ed Wood? Or,
no.
Ed Wood the movie or Edward D. Wood Jr., the director?
No, I think, you know, again, the movie is brilliant. And if people haven't seen it, they should definitely see it. It's one of my favorites. I love that movie. And Ed Wood, I think, the filmmaker, you know, his movies are a bit of an acquired taste, perhaps. But, you know, if you enjoy bad movies, he's definitely one of the great bad movie makers. So you should definitely check him out. I didn't realize I hadn't seen some of these, like Jailbait. I thought I'd seen Jailbait, but I was getting it confused with another movie that he wrote and didn't direct. So yeah, even I haven't seen all the Ed Wood movies, and I should do that because if nothing else, they're always interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Definitely check out the Essential List. Definitely check out the ancillary films, Ed Wood and Best Worst Movie. So those are 12 movies to definitely check out. And after watching Plan 9 and Ed Wood, if you're still interested in the guy, check out some of his other movies. I'd probably put Jailbait towards the top of that list. Glenn and Glenda, just because it's so weird, it's different. And then after that, maybe Bride of the Monster. Even though I like Night of the Ghouls better, Bride of the Monster does have Bela Lugosi, so it does have the edge there. Night of the Ghouls is probably a little bit better than Bride of the Monster, so definitely check out both if you want. But of the movies, after Plan 9, I'd say probably Jailbait and Glenn and Glenda would probably be the next ones to check out.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, well, that'll do it. Until next time.
All right.